Um, well, yeah, 69, 70. So I was still at school, and I got into like the Beatles and Cream and a lot of the blues rocks kind of bands, from that time, Fleetwood Mac, stuff like that, like Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, not the later one. And and it just became the thing I wanted to do, you know. So it, like everything I've ever done, really, if I've wanted to do something, I've just gone into it 100%, and that's always been the way I am with everything. And playing guitar was no different. So yeah, so I just like concentrated on guitar more than anything, really. I mean, it sort of took over from my schoolwork, really. Um, um, and I started going to gigs and stuff at that time. So I kind of knew that was the area I wanted to work in, or try to work in, put it that way. So we had a band at school and stuff. Everybody does, and you play with your friends, and you think you sound great, but you sound crap, and all that. And when I left school, I just took a job because all I wanted to do was be able to buy equipment so that I could, do the thing I wanted to do professionally. So that was the idea. And, I played, I auditioned for a few bands and stuff, not too many. And that's where Japan came in.
So how did you actually end up working or joining the band?
Well, there was, they put an ad in Melody Maker. Oh. I mean, there was no name or anything. It was just band into Bowie, Roxy Music, T-Rex, looking for guitarists. I can't remember exactly what the ad said, but I was very much into Roxy at that time. I'd seen them live a few times, and they were like my favorite band at the time. So I thought, oh, well, this could work, So I called them up, and I lived in North London. I lived in Hackney in North London, and the band are all from Lewisham in South London. So it meant, getting on a train and another train and lugging my gear. I can't remember if I actually carried an amp with me. I doubt that I took an amp with me. I probably told them that, that I'll just bring my guitar and whatever. And anyway, so I went to Dave and Steve's house, and Mick was there, and Steve and Dave were there, and I was impressed straight away because they had a PA system.
As you do.
Yeah. A lot of bands don't have their own PA system when they're starting out and stuff, and they had their own PA. So I thought, oh, this is interesting, And then it was clear that David had written some songs, and we just really got on. Really, I mean, it was just a very easy rehearsal. I just played along on some things, and we talked a lot, and that was it. I mean, they accepted me there and then, and I was part of the band.
Because early Japan was very sort of glam rocky.
Yeah, well, that's what. Yeah, I mean, that's what we were into.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
It's the Bowie thing, the T-Rex thing. I mean, in those days, David's voice was definitely influenced by Mark Bolan.
Yeah.
You could hear it in his inflections in those days, in the very early days. Yeah, I mean, it was just seemed like it would work. So.
But at that point, you were more guitarist than a EBO.
Well, I mean, the EBO wasn't even invented in those days.
Yeah.
You know, I was just a guitarist. Yeah. I mean, I just played what would fit, hopefully.
Yeah, but I mean, moving on from Japan, because we know a lot about Japan, and as we spoke last time. I mean, when obviously you were very involved with the EBO and everything, which is quite amazing sound. But when did you actually realize that you were either leaving Japan or you were out of Japan, and how did you actually feel about that?
Well, it was it became harder for me to find parts for the songs because it was getting more electronic as time was going on, and I could tell that David in particular didn't really see it as being as much of a guitar band anymore. I mean, I was fine being in a band that was somewhat electronic, as you know. I mean, like the Quiet Life album was a great time for everybody. Everybody really had a great time making it. We got on really well, and we really gelled as a unit in those days. But then when it came to Gentlemen Take Polaroids, it was complicated because the band wanted to move on, but the material was not quite there. I mean, the material was more still in keeping with kind of like Quiet Life, you know, stuff that we had at that point. And then while we were recording Gentlemen Take Polaroids, it was clear that David was writing new stuff and in the studio, and it was just kind of like harder to find parts that worked, and so my involvement became less, partly through myself, you know, and myself not really feeling comfortable putting parts on certain songs. And you know, it just gets to that point where you just think, well, is this going to work anymore? And then you know, I got a call from David saying, you know, that was kind of it for us, which was something of a relief for me, really, because I didn't really know what I could contribute anymore, you know. And there was definitely kind of a rift between myself and David at that point. Not so much the others, you know, we all got on really well. But David had a, you know, very strong idea about what he wanted to do, and it didn't really involve me. So
if I'm honest, you know, I listened to a lot of Japan, well, all your albums and everything. Yeah. And it might piss a lot of people off, but I think Tin Drum is their worst album. It's too clinical.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think it's a very clinical, cold album. I agree with you, but I think that's kind of what he wanted.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he wanted it to be sort of a reaction against what he'd been doing before. You know? And so, you know, I can appreciate that. I can always appreciate when artists move forward.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And take new directions and stuff. I can always appreciate that, because that's what musicians should do. They should move on. They should go on to other things. And so I can certainly appreciate that, but I'm I can't really say that I enjoy what the outcome was.
No, I listened to it several times after we spoke last time.
Yeah.
And it's too studio. It's too like I said, it's too clinical. I mean, with Quiet Life and Gentlemen Take Polaroids, there's loads of stuff going on.
Right.
But there wasn't on that one.
Well, I think, I think Quiet Life in particular has a lot of warmth to it. And I think part of that is the way it was recorded and the feeling of everybody when we were recording it. I think those sort of things always come through, on a record. If it's a positive experience, I think that feeling comes through on the record. And I really feel that with Quiet Life. And I think Gentlemen Take Polaroids has a lot of really great ideas and stuff, but it's somewhat disjointed, and that's because there's this kind of like pull.
Yeah.
I know it's a lot of people's favorite Japan album, and that's fine. I mean, there are things on it that I really, really do like a lot. But there's other things that I feel it's not completely realized for me. But I mean, at the same time, at that time, I was listening to a lot of stuff that was like electronic pop, at the time. I certainly wasn't averse to it. I mean, I like the Human League and Simple Minds, and Magazine were probably my favorite band at that time. And yeah, so I mean, I was listening to a lot of other electronic craft work, and Yellow Magic Orchestra, of course, Thomas Dolby, that sort of stuff. So it wasn't like it was completely removed from what I was listening to, but as far as my own career, it was, well, it was a deciding time for me, I think. I didn't really want to live in England. I had this desire to move to the US for a while. I had friends in LA, and so that was what I did. I moved to the States.
But I mean, when we just finish off with Japan a little bit, but when do you actually think to yourself, we've made it big in the band?
Yeah.
Which point had it came that you were playing, small venues, etc., to you actually thought, hello, we've made it big here?
Well, the thing was, I mean, we were fortunate in that we were very popular in Japan. As soon as they discovered us, we became huge in Japan. I mean, the first time we played in Japan, we did 2 nights at the Budokan, and at that time in England, we were playing, like the Marquee Club or,
Yeah.
So, I mean, we had that sort of, it was like a secondary life, if you like. I mean, in the Far East, we were huge, and in England, we were struggling. Europe, we were doing okay, but I remember when we were doing the tour for Gentlemen Take Polaroids, and it was suggested that we did Hammersmith Odeon. We were like, oh, do you think we can fill Hammersmith Odeon?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, from that point on, it became clear that the band was moving ahead in England, finally, I mean, yeah, I mean, it was kind of cool to be recognized at last. Yeah. On the wave of this like new wave, you know, electronic thing, which we weren't really a part of, but we kind of ushered in that kind of
well, you became part of it, didn't you, with the, you know, the
kind
silver
of,
became very heavy.
yeah, kind of, but I mean, it was early on, really.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, because David Sylvian had gone from a glam rock to a new romantic.
right. Well, I don't
burst.
think it was ever. I don't think it was ever new romantic. I think new romantic was something which came along, but I wouldn't. I mean, I think there was a loose connection there.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think it was a strong one. You know, I think we were a forerunner of new romantic.
Yeah. I know that, but you know, because the way the music and everything was changing at that moment, you know, late 70s, early 80s, and I think it was a magical time. There was definitely a lot going on, and yourselves had changed from a bit of a glam rock.
Right.
I wouldn't say, yeah, I'm probably wrong with new romantic, because that was a different thing completely, but it was definitely in that sort of direction, wasn't it?
I think that sort of came afterwards, really. You know, that was kind of like right at the end. By the time Japan split up, you know, it was kind of more established, I think. I mean, you know, that whole Blitz crowd thing, Spandau Ballet and all that was really at the end of Japan as a band, really.
It was actually. It's quite surprising, really. But then after you left Japan and you went on a tour with Gary Numan on the Assassin tour. Yeah. I mean, after that, you joined up with Roger Mason on the Illustration Man and the Slow Club. I mean, how did them two things come about?
Well, you know, Roger and I got on really well on the Assassin tour. We had very similar taste in music, and so when the tour finished, Roger was living in London at that time, and I was living in LA. But I decided after the tour that I was going to go back to London and start writing with Roger. And so I went back to England at that point, and we started, you know, we shared a flat in London, and we work all night, you know, recording stuff on a little Porter studio and stuff, and we'd be doing this stuff. Anyway, so the plan was to do our own thing. That was the idea, to actually do our own thing, which never came to fruition. But we recorded quite a few tracks, and then at that point, Roger knew this guy called Philip Foxman in Australia, who was in a band called Supernaut, and I guess they met while he was touring with the Models and stuff. Yeah. And he was in London, and he'd got a contract, a development contract with EMI, and Roger started working with him, and he brought me in, and I brought Hugo Burnham in, who I'd met through playing gigs supporting Gang of Four, and also through ABC, who were he played with ABC, and ABC were friends of mine, and so through that connection, I got Hugo involved, and we became a band basically, and the band was called Illustrated Man. And we recorded an album with John Punter producing, the same, because he was a good friend of mine from the Japan days. And so we recorded an album, and a EP was released in the States, a 12-inch EP. But only a couple of singles were released in England at that point. And the album never actually got released. We played a tour. We did a tour supporting Nick Kershaw throughout England. Yeah. And we did some other gigs in England. Like we supported like Cyndi Lauper at the Lyceum. And I can't remember what else we did, but we played some gigs, and then we did a tour in the US, our own tour, club tour. And at the end of that, both Roger and I decided that we didn't really want to continue with it. It just wasn't working on a creative level for us. So we decided to split. And we both went back to LA, to the US, and Roger was working on, I can't remember what he was doing. Maybe he was doing some soundtrack work, but I can't remember. But anyway, and so I was back in the US for a while, but that wasn't really doing anything for me, and I went back to England. So that was that. And then, so after that, I worked with Sinead O'Connor. I did her first album. This is kind of like, this is a concise, thing. I mean, there are other things going on, but
Well, I was going to ask you about Sinead O'Connor, so it's good that you've come.
Yeah. Well, because it comes before the Slow Club, you see. So,
right.
So in chronological order, Sinead came. I worked with her for well over a year. I mean, basically. As a band, we rehearsed pretty solidly for almost a year before we recorded the first album. And we recorded that album twice.
Right.
Because, well, the first album the producer was a guy called Mick Glossop, who'd worked with the Waterboys and Van Morrison. And his approach was very old school.
Right.
He was recording like everything live in the studio. And like his idea of doing like a 12-inch mix of something, which was bound to happen at some point, with the material, was to like jam on the track for like 8 minutes.
Right. Sorry.
And then pick the bits that you want to use.
Yeah.
But ultimately what happened with that was that the album as such was kind of finished, and the record company Ensign took it to other producers to see about remixing tracks and stuff, and they all basically agreed that it couldn't be remixed because there were no click tracks.
Right. Yeah.
So you sync things up or doing. So the record company decided to ditch that and use some of the tracks, on certain tracks, and then re-record everything in a more simplified, digitalized way, more modern way,
Well, yeah, that's where we were at that time. Well,
yeah, exactly. And so that was why we did it. That's why we did it twice.
So then after Sinead, you then went back to the doing the Slow Club?
Well, what happened was the album was done, and Sinead got pregnant, and so everything on the album front was put back until she had her baby. And so there was a time when there was a time of many months where nothing could be done, really. So during that time, I got a call from a friend of mine, a drummer in Australia, and he was playing with this band called Geisha, and he asked if I wanted to come and do a tour. I had never been to Australia, and so I thought, yeah, okay, I'll do it, And I went over to Australia, and I toured with this band, living in Australia. And while there, I got Warner Chappell Music were interested in my songs. I had, I'd written a group of songs, and so they signed me to a contract. And then the idea was to create a band around my songs in Australia. So that was like put in motion. Myself and Tom, the drummer who brought me over to Australia, we decided we needed a vocalist. So we looked around for a vocalist. Well, in fact, what happened was I went back to England after the touring that I'd done. And during that time, it was his responsibility to find a singer. Originally, I was going to be the singer, but and I did like I took vocal lessons. I used this vocal coach that Kylie Minogue was using at the time. She always had the lesson before me, so I
oh well, she was so lucky.
Yeah. It was yeah, I mean, the idea was that I was going to be the singer, but then I decided that, because I love singing, but I decided that I didn't really want to be a front man. And so it was decided to find someone else. So anyway, so that's what happened. And then we started, rehearsing to record an album. We got all the tracks together and stuff, and we recorded the album, and we toured, on the back of that album. We had one of our songs went to like number 20 in the Australian singles charts. And, it was good, but it was quite intense for me anyway, because it was my project.
And this is with the Slow Club.
Yeah. And Roger's involvement with that was that, I asked him to be the keyboard player on the record. I mean, he wasn't part of the band, but I asked him to play all the keyboards on the album. So that's how he was involved with it. And yeah, after we'd recorded the album and toured quite a bit, because you can tour a lot in Australia. There's a lot of places to play in Australia.
Yeah.
The music scene, certainly at that time, was very healthy. Anyway, I had to renew my work visa for Australia, and to do that, I had to leave the country. So I went back to England to renew my work visa. But during that time, I went to Peru for like 5 weeks, Peru and Bolivia. And during that time, I decided that I didn't want to go back to Australia. I didn't want to continue doing music at that point. I wanted to travel and see the world and stuff, and that's what brought me to Costa Rica.
Well, was a question I was going to follow on with, that you sort of dropped out of the music industry
Yeah.
quite a long time, and you went to Peru. I mean,
Mhm.
how did that sort of, you were just fed up of it all, or what happened?
Well, I just think going on the trip to Peru and Bolivia for me just opened me up to new sensations,
Mm.
you know, and I just felt that I needed to pursue that kind of travel. Yeah, just, it's all out there. So it was like something I felt I needed to do before it got too late.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
life's a funny thing.
I didn't know I was going to be moving to Costa Rica and staying
No.
there. That was not the plan. Well, there was no plan. I mean, as far as I was concerned, I was going to backpack around Latin America for, I don't know, 6 months to 2 years and see what happened, and go from there. Maybe go back to England, maybe not. Just be open to anything.
Well, I was going to say, life's a funny thing, and sometimes you come across something, and you just think to yourself, sod everything else. This is
Yeah.
what it's about.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think in some ways, I think it was probably the best decision I've ever made.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much out there. There's so many experiences to be had if you allow yourself to be open to them.
Mm.
And so for a while there, I was open to them.
And sometimes in life, you just get that moment where everything seems right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as music was concerned, being in charge, like the Slow Club being my band and stuff, being in charge was an extremely intense thing for me. I didn't really like to be in that much control of everything. I realized that it wasn't something I wanted to do particularly. I enjoyed playing music, but as far as the responsibility of it being your own thing, at that point, I realized that wasn't really what I wanted to do. So,
but now, after several years, you're back into music to a degree.
Yeah, to a certain degree. I mean, it's different because I'm not thinking about it as a be-all end-all career. It's just something that I enjoy doing, and therefore I'm happy doing more of it. And it's nice being creative in any way, and that's kind of as far as it goes. I mean, I'm not going to be going on tour or anything anytime soon. That's not really on the cards.
But it's more about the fun and enjoying, isn't it?
Yeah, just getting back into the creative process and enjoying it, and not putting too much responsibility on yourself by doing it. You don't need record company backing to release.
No, you don't. I know.
I mean, okay, it might be like smaller scope, but I don't think I'd want to be part of the whole music making machine, you know.
Well, you've done that, and
Yeah,
and you know that was back then. Today's terms are so much different. You know,
yeah, yeah,
you get 9p for every download of a pound.
right.
You know, so it's the money in selling records or music has gone, hasn't it? You know, it's
To a large extent, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
the only way it seems that bands can make money is by touring and
yeah.
merchandise.
Yeah, I mean, touring obviously makes loads of money nowadays. I mean, it's abnormal prices to go and see someone.
Yeah,
And the
yeah, it's crazy.
merchandise,
It's
yeah.
crazy how much ticket prices are. It's just insane.
Well, it's not even that. It's like we used to, and I'm sure you've done it. Queue up at the back of a venue to see the artist to get something signed or just say hello. Well, now you got to pay £200 for the privilege. So, yeah, it's all changed.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So yeah, so it's just something that I'm dabble with from time to time, you know, just get into. I really do. What I did really realize is that I really do enjoy recording. I love recording. I love being in the studio and being creative and doing that. That's something that I'd kind of forgotten how much I enjoyed. So that's, you know, that makes it, that gives it more allure, that makes it more appealing, you know, to do it again. And hopefully I will do it again sometime soon.
Oh, it'd be amazing if you did. But you were telling me the other night the guitar you used to EBO. Is that a certain type of guitar, or is that just the sound you make with it?
No, I mean you can use an EBO with any guitar, really.
Oh, okay.
It's yeah. I mean it can sound good with any instrument, really. I mean if you know, put lots of effects on it and stuff, you put, like I always use a fair amount of delay and reverb and stuff, and you just, it gives it a lot of space. It's one thing that I learned from Robert Fripp in that there's a certain tone of guitar that can fit into a track without kind of taking over, but it can be very present there, and there's a certain tone which he uses with you know, heavy fuzz generally, but I can create something fairly similar with an EBO. It's just long, thick, sustained notes. For some reason, they really fit into a track really well.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I learned that from Fripp.
Oh, brilliant. But Robert, fantastic to talk to you tonight.
Sure.
And
again.
It's brilliant. We got there in the end. Yes, we definitely did.
Yeah.
But you will always be known as the EBO guitarist. But thank you for joining me tonight, mate. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, as always.